Whomever sends that heart, I always appreciate it. I get that heart for every single session. So thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Hate Bias Forum webinar series, In Our Own Voices. We are so glad you could join us today. I know some of you have been with us for all 4 sessions, so thank you. My name is Nicola Smith-Key. I'm the Senior Project Manager with responsibility for implementing the Anne Arundel County Hate Crimes Prevention Program. Also on the team, we have Tiffany Akinbulumo. Tiffany is our community outreach specialist, and Tiffany has been a trooper. She's the one who has managed all the technicalities around putting together these webinars. We also have Ziyu Gu, who is our research and data analyst, and there is an administrative support assistant position that is currently open. So please do share with others if you know anyone who might be interested. Before we get started, I want to quickly cover some housekeeping items. This is an informational session. The session is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be sent to registrants within the next 2 to 3 days. For a focused presentation, we have muted all attendees. Also, the chat and Q&A functions will not be available during this session. We have enabled closed captioning. You can make that selection at the bottom of your screen if needed. If you are experiencing technical difficulties or if you have questions, concerns, suggestions, please feel free to send an email to nohatehere@aacounty.org. For more information, please visit the Anne Arundel County Hate Crime Prevention webpage at www.aacounty.org/nohatehere. Today, we are joined by the Anne Arundel County Public School. Our presenter for today is Dr. Maisha Gillings. Dr. Gillings is the Chief Executive Officer for the Anne Arundel Public School. Dr. Gillings will be walking us through the AACPS Bias Behavior and Language Policy and Regulation and discuss ways in which AACPS is taking a preventative approach mitigating bias behavior and language. I will now turn it over to Dr. Gillings.
Thank you, Dr. Nikki. I'm going to get my slide deck going here. So thank you. So just a little bit about my background before I get started. So yes, I am the Chief Equity Officer for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I actually started my career in Anne Arundel County Public Schools in 1997, where I started out as a middle school math teacher. And since then, I've had a variety of roles in Anne Arundel County, from being, again, a middle school teacher, math teacher, to a high school math teacher. I oversaw our Title I program in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I was a principal at 2 middle schools in Anne Arundel County. I spent a few years coaching principals and their school teams. And then my last position has been current position as a chief equity officer for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And the reason why I think it's important to share that information about my background is because I'm able to really put on all these different hats that I've worn in the school system as I am going through the presentation. And I better not forget to mention that I am a mother of 2 Anne Arundel County Public School students. I have a senior and I have a 7th grader. So again, not only am I bringing my AACPS employee hat to this presentation, I'm also bringing my experience or my perspective as a parent of 2 students in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So we're going to get started. I'm going to be unpacking the AACPS policy around bias behavior and language. And it's important for the community to know what is it that Anne Arundel County Public Schools is doing to make sure that we are mitigating any bias behaviors that are happening in our schools. So first things first, and I appreciate Dr. Nikki doing some housekeeping. I have a little bit of housekeeping going on here as well. If you have the ability to take out your phone or a device that has a camera, and if you can point it to this QR code, you're going to actually get access to the links where I'm going to share some additional resources while we're together this evening. So I'll give you a moment to do that. I don't know if those heart features are still able to show up, but any confirmation would be great. Oh, I see a heart. There we go. That means that some folks out there were say, oh, and I see some thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, if you can take a moment, and these links will be for you, obviously, to have, because once you have that open, you can begin clicking on some links that, again, that I will be sharing during this presentation. All right, let's get, and then this QR code will come back on at the very end as well. So let's get started with our Anne Arundel County Public Schools strategic plan. This was a collaborative effort between community members along with Anne Arundel County Public Schools employees. And the strategic plan is grounded in some core beliefs here, which is really important, again, to ground this discussion around mitigating incidents of bias and hate in the school system. To our core, we believe it's important that all students have a sense of belonging. We believe in equity in our schools. We believe in innovation, integrity, and safety. Again, grounding this conversation as to what we believe in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And in the strategic plan, it reviews these priorities. And through achieving academic excellence, we know that our students must have a solid academic foundation. We have another priority is future readiness and transitional preparedness. How ready are our students, right, when they leave Anne Arundel County Public Schools? Our priority is investing in our staff. You know, the best learning happens when you have highly qualified folks in front of children. Priority number 4 is around supporting the whole child. So yes, we have academics, we have that social emotional piece. That's that sense of belonging. How are we truly wrapping our arms around all of our students? And then lastly, building and sustaining our future. So let's get down to the bias behavior and language policy and regulation. So here's some background information. On the left, and again, you have these links in that one-pager guide that you just access via the QR code. On the left side, you see the policy. So this is how policy works in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. The members of the school board, they're the ones that adopt and vote on policy. So they're telling AACPS school district, these are the things you must do. So policy is the must do. The regulation is developed by staff, and it's how are we going to ensure that we are meeting the expectations of the policy. So I'm going to click on my screen just so we can see together really what does the regulation look like. Again, letting the community know, letting employees know what it is that's expected of us. And so you'll notice here there is a purpose for this bias behavior and language regulation. There's some background information that again helps to guide why we have this biased behavior and language policy and regulation. The regulation offers some definitions. We call it level setting. It's really important that everyone is speaking the same language when we're talking about biased behavior and language. What is it or what it isn't? So again, you should have access to this. We have age bias, disability bias, again, giving definitions to make sure that we are speaking, we have the same understanding as to the language that we're using. And it continues on. Okay, so those are the definitions. Then the regulation includes procedure. So what do you do? What happens if a bias behavioral language incident happens on AACPS property? It goes into the process for reporting. We get a lot of questions. A bias incident happened. What do I do with that? A student could have come home to share with a family member or friend that an incident at school happened. This regulation lets families know what the next steps are in reporting. Okay. There is an investigation that takes place. So once it's reported to the school is responsible for investigating, right? Questioning the student. Are there any witnesses? Were there individuals around who can write a statement to say, yeah, this is what I heard or this is what I saw? So again, an investigation is really, really important. Okay. Letter C talks about FERPA. This part I have to say is one of the hardest parts about when an incident occurs, because we are bound by not giving out information about other students. And again, it was important for me to say that I've been doing this since 1997. So I've been at this for a while. And I know that oftentimes this is a very frustrating space for families when an incident has occurred with their student. And they want to know, well, who did it and what's going to happen to the other student? But their protections, right? Their protections when it comes to releasing that type of information. It's very, 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 very frustrating. And oftentimes I encourage families to work with your student, and your student will tell you exactly who it is and et cetera. Just the school system, we are not in a position to do that. And you can see here, it's for FERPA. It's for FERPA. So again, additional information. And the purpose of this, as the title said, is unpacking this policy and the regulation, and for the community to know that this exists. This is public facing. This is on the AACPS website. So this is public facing. There is something called due process. So due process really means a couple of things. It means that the school system has a responsibility to investigate. The school system has a responsibility to let individuals or all parties involved know what's going on, right? And so let's say through the investigation, it results in a suspension, for instance, with that other family, right, where the student who, through their investigation, have found that they violated the student code of conduct, then that family has to be informed, right, of all that. So that's part of a due process, is having all involved an opportunity to write a statement, to share their side of the story. Then the school makes a determination based on the student code of conduct, and then consequences happen. Now, the question oftentimes is, well, will the victim, right, the family where this incident happened to, will they know the consequence? They will not. All we can say is we followed the student code of conduct, because again, that is a FERPA violation. If the school were to share with the family, oh, well, this is what, the student was suspended for 3 days, that would be in violation of FERPA. So again, speaking of the consequences, and I will be showing the student code of conduct in the presentation tonight. So above really was, if an incident happens, it gets reported, there is investigation, there's due process. Also part of the regulation, which I think is important to note, there are some prevention, right? So definitely if something happens, there are consequences, but we want to prevent the things from happening in the first place, right? To minimize harm being done to students, period. And so the regulation gives guidance to schools on what are some preventative measures that they can do to head off these things happening in the first place. So again, I think this is really important for the community to know that there is language in here to provide guidance for schools to take a preventative approach to bias, language, and behavior. And then in the regulation, it talks about some interventions and supports that schools can have, whether it be getting some support from central office staff or some support staff or student support services at their own school. So here's some examples of some things that can be at the school level, to include community and family, right? To really have that community connection, because of some of the issues, some of the things that we may see may root from the community and kind of make its way to the school. So there are some things in which we can certainly partner with the community. And the bullying, cyberbullying, harassment, intimidation, you will get access to this. This is the form that community members, families can fill out if there is a report about bias motivated behavior. So I'm going to go back to the slide deck. So again, that was the policy and the regulation. You should have access to those in that one pager from that QR code. So part of the regulation, I did talk about the student handbook. You should have that as well. So the student handbook, this is given to all Anne Arundel County Public School students at the beginning of the school year. And what you see on the screen to the right is this acknowledgement page. And so there is an expectation for the student, for the school, the teachers, they have student code of conduct lessons. I'll go over that in a moment. But for the student to take this page home, so the families can sign off on it to say that they have reviewed the student code of conduct or the student handbook. Why is this important? Again, back to like those definitions I talked about, that we're all on the same page. What the student handbook does, it ensures that families, that we're all on the same page as to what is expected for student behaviors. So this is really important. So some of you, if you have students in the school district and you're like, I never saw this before, call that school tomorrow, because we have to make sure that that we are truly in partnership around the student handbook. So let's take a look at what it looks like. And again, this is electronic as well. So if you go through, it gives a hotline. I think this is a really important page as far as if students or families find themselves in crisis situations. You definitely have this here. Again, this is this acknowledgement piece here. Again, we keep going. Here's the table of contents. Talks about student rights, that due process we talked about. Lots of really good information in the student handbook. As you can see, I got some thumbs up. That's great. Getting help with the problem, right? If I have a school problem, there's personal problems, academic problems, this is what I can do, right, as the adult to help advocate for an AACPS student, okay? And then again, there's that reporting form as well. So I'm going to scoot through quickly here to get to the part where so a lot of families want to know, well, what are some of the consequences? So here we go. So again, in the student handbook, you'll find a section that's called infractions, interventions, and consequences. This is grades pre-K through 5. And you can see the list of, alcohol and other drugs. Here are the things that could happen. And those dots represent what we call progressive discipline, right? It's very rare that you will hop to that fifth one. You see there's a few of them, but let's look at one here, for example. You see there's only one dot, and that's way at the end. That's because this is arson and fire. It's really, you cannot for safety reasons, you can't go, oh, I'm going to give you a warning, because we all know arson and fire can obviously cause harm, not only for that student who may have fire or started a fire, but obviously it can harm other students. So you can see here, there's certain instances in which the severity and the safety for that student and for others really hops over to the last one. And so you see here, biased behavior language, there are consequences here to include a class, and I will be going over that in a moment. So you have that for the younger grades, and then you have infractions for grades 6 through 12. And again, you have the biased behavior and language. So that is in our code of conduct, which says it is not allowed. In the code of conduct, they also have a glossary page as well. And I'm going through quickly. I know you all have access to this, but I do want to scoot towards the back of the book. It probably would have been faster if I do this here. Let me go down this way. Here we go. And here's a glossary. Again, you see this here, language around bias, behavior, and language, right? And the types of bias that can be included. So again, this is a really great resource, is how are you defining these things in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, where here it is, here it is right here. Okay, I'm gonna get back to the slide deck. Okay. So again, bias, behavior, and language, according to our student code of conduct, is not allowable behavior, and there are infractions that go along with that. Here's another resource here. So again, one of the consequences if a student finds the school found that, yep, this is a bias motivated behavior or language infraction, there is what we will call a bias motive and behavior and language program or class. So let's see if I can get to that in a moment. Again, you have access to this. So there's a class that students have to take, right? We are a teaching institution, and so we do believe it's really important for young people to understand the impact of bias, behavior, and language on other students. And in order to do that, you teach them, you educate, right? Again, yes, there are consequences that happen, but with those consequences, there's also teaching, right? So we can change the behavior for young people to understand here's the impact of their actions on other students. And again, just some learning, right? I've been on several of the webinars for the hate bias conversations, and I've learned a lot. So definitely with education, then hopefully that curbs, right, some future behaviors. So again, this gives you an overview of the program. It talks about the schedule. As you can see here, not only the student receives the education, parents are also involved, because again, we truly believe we have to be in partnership in order for students, right, to improve. We got to have support of the family to assist their student in not continuing certain behaviors. And then this particular conversation is bias motivated language and behavior. So again, you should have this in your in that one pager as well. Oops. Code of conduct lesson. So I'm going to kind of restate what we've said, what I've talked about already. So we have a policy, we have regulations around bias motivated language and behavior. Those regulations, they're very clear as to what schools need to do to make sure we are abiding by that policy. We have a student code of conduct that tells families, here is what is expected of all AACPS students. We also, on top of that, have what we will call lessons, code of conduct lessons. Your student, they may say, like the first 2 weeks of school, they may be like, oh, here we go again. We're talking about the code of conduct lessons again, right? Again, remember, I've been in the district since 1997. I know what young people say about those first few weeks of school because all teachers are directed to review code of conduct lesson. So it's one thing to have a booklet and to read it. It's another thing to turn some of those those items that we see a pattern of behavior over the years. We turn those topics into lessons. So you can see here, this lesson is titled, "What Would You Do?" And it's all about the impact of bias. So again, this is a teacher getting lessons from my colleagues in safe and orderly schools. They develop them, and then the teachers deliver it to students. Again, not only are they reading it in a code of conduct handbook that I shared with you with the yellow cover, they are engaging in dialogue through lessons that are delivered by teachers. And this is typically happens again the first few weeks of school. We also have Unity Day lessons. So again, I'm transitioning the conversation to how are we not only just have these things in print of what you're not supposed to do, how are we really educating and working with our students around this topic with bias behavior and language. So again, you have the code of conduct lessons, so they're taught things. Unity Day lessons. So there's 12 early dismissal days that occur in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. 4 of those 12 days are carved out of what we call Unity Day. And again, if you have a student in Anne Arundel County, you get the Connect Ed messages that gives families an opportunity even to buy a shirt that it's orange. It's an orange shirt because orange represents unity, and it really is based on an anti-bullying program. And so how we have embraced that in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, so those four of the 12 early dismissal days are for teachers. When students leave for the day, they do equity professional learning that gets created out of my office. So they're learning about culturally responsive teaching, implicit bias. The list goes on as to what learning that the adults are in. Now, when the students are there during that day, they do Unity Day lessons. So for the elementary, here are the topics that are covered at the elementary level, and here are the topics that are covered at the secondary level. Again, these are lessons that are taught to students through during the school day when we have those 4 Unity Day lessons. So students are learning, and then when students go home, the teachers are then engaged in learning. And again, the purpose is to create an environment that is bias free. That's the purpose of all this learning and all this education and all conversation around unity, etc. Here's some other examples to provide you as to what the Unity Day lessons have looked like, especially at the secondary level. There are these called speak up strategies. This also is something we work towards. A lot of times you have students that are bystanders or even adults that are bystanders and they overhear something, and a lot of times, or something may be said to them and they're kind of caught off guard or they're frozen and they're either because they're in shock or they don't know what to say. We call like tongue tied, like, I cannot believe they just said what they said. Or again, you may overhear something and you're like, well, they didn't say it to me. Is it really my place to intervene or to speak up? And so what we have done, not only for secondary students in particular, also staff, we have engaged in this conversation and practice how to use some of these strategies, right? If you're witness to, if something is said to you that's biased in nature, how do you respond back? We can't just freeze. And so here are some strategies we offer. One of them being is interrupting, right? You can, and we have even practice phrasing. You can say, I don't like those words, right? That is hurtful. That's that interrupting piece. Question could be from a perspective of wondering, why do you say that? What do you mean? Tell me more about that statement that you said. So more of a question, it's like an inquiry, right? This curiosity of, I need to know more what's behind the statement that was made. Another strategy is educate. I have found, again, I've been doing this since 1997, and we are a teaching, right, organization. That's what we do. We teach young people, we teach each other as adults. There's education. Again, I was on early with Dr. Nikki and Tiffany, and just talking about even with the series that they've put on, I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot. There's no way I can know everything. And so, education, a lot of times, or many times, there are things that are said, and this is lack of knowing, it's ignorance. Now, granted, we also know that no, there are folks who mean what they say, and it's intended to be hurtful, and educate sometimes is not the right strategy for those individuals. But there are definitely many individuals where education it can help to turn the behavior around. And then we have echo. Echo really means if you see someone speaking up and speaking out, support them. Support them. Don't let them be the only lone person being brave and bold and speaking out against something. Support them. Say, yes, I agree exactly what he, she, they, them said. I agree with that statement. So echoing is important. So again, these are strategies, tangible strategies that we have shared not only with our secondary students, but we've also shared with our staff as well to interrupt biased behavior and language. So what can you do? So again, you should have access to this link on that one pager. So this is a screenshot of our website. So I'm going to attempt to do that so you can see. Okay. So you can see here where you're like, well, Dr. Gilliland, we're talking about bias motivated behavior. Why do you have anti-bullying? Well, biased behavior falls under the harassment, right? And so this will be the form that families, communities would fill out. If a biased behavior happens, it will go through this process here, this form right here. And again, you do have access to the form and that QR code. So here is, again, additional resources for definitions. Again, this one is specifically around bullying behavior. And then there's some steps on what can be done here. Okay. And then I am going to go and click on the bullying form. Again, harassment falls under that biased behavior. Harass, because you're being harassed, right? With the biased behavior. And so this is what it looks like. I'm not going to begin the form, but I want everyone to see what the form looks like if an incident occurs and someone brings it to your attention, that everyone has access, even if you don't have a student in the district. Let's say you're visiting a friend's house and they happen to have an AACPS student and they're talking about an incident. You could fill it out even though you may not have a student in the district. So that's important to know because we're all responsible to make sure that these things are being reported. So again, some additional things about what can you do in your in that one pager. Here's some wonderful resources. So one of the resources that I mentioned was Speak Up strategies that actually came from here, this Learning for Justice. Here, one of the things that we talk about in my office is we all have our own responsibilities to educate ourselves on things, right? If you're like, you know what, I just kind of, I'm still not there. Well, I highly encourage you to read, and have conversations around the impact of biased behavior on other on others. And I think I went through pretty quickly, Dr. Nikki. If I need to go back to something, let me know. And here is again the links that were in at the very beginning for you to have an opportunity to make sure you grab those and not only have the links to the resources that I went over, but also those links to resources for you to continue to learn, again, the impact of bias motivated behavior and language. And then also, how can we create spaces to make sure that we are in bias free spaces? No one deserves to be a victim or a receiving end of bias and behavior, and it impacts all of us. You know, it impacts learning, it impacts how you show up, it impacts how I feel about myself. And so it's really important. I do believe we're all responsible to ensure what we say, how we say it, is not offensive, it's not causing harm to other people. We all have responsibility in that. I'll stop sharing, Dr. Nikki. Are there
Thank
any
you.
other things I can go back to? I know I didn't realize how fast I was going to get through that.
That's perfectly fine. I think this is really important for folks on, and I know some people had difficulties getting on, but I think it's important for folks to hear what is happening in the school system, what is actually being done on the ground, how the students are embracing or understanding this. I think is really important. So it might not have lasted for the hour, but I think a wonderful presentation with a wealth of information. So really want to thank you for that. And I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us. Um, we are so grateful. I know some of you, this is for you. It has been the fourth webinar that you've been on for us. I wanted to share some additional information for you, with you. So I want to bring to your attention a few things. We will be having a Defending the Faith training session. This is a partnership with the Anne Arundel County Police Department and the Office of Emergency Management. And you can scan the QR code to register, or you can visit our website for more information. We have also been developing a hate bias incident reporting portal. And I said to someone, if this is the only thing we do for the entire 4 years, we would have succeeded, because this will be big. This will be separate and apart from law enforcement. I don't think it is a mystery that I'm an immigrant. I am an American, but I'm an immigrant. And I know for a fact that a lot of immigrant communities, a lot of diverse communities, a lot of communities who experience hate and harm are sometimes not comfortable reaching out to law enforcement. And so this will be another space for people to report. It's a supplemental tool right throughout the reporting portal. We will be encouraging people to report to law enforcement, because we cannot fix a problem unless we know what the extent of the problem is. And so really excited about that. And then mark your calendars. We are going to be sending out a save the date for February 20th and 21st. We will have the first ever Anne Arundel County Hate Crimes Conference. It will have a much better title than that. So you will look out and you will see that soon. So again, something I wanted to really extend, and I did it in the session yesterday. I want to extend an invitation to others, because we've been getting emails from individuals who have joined the webinars. Can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? If your community has a story to share for understanding, we're not pitting against each other. If you have a story to share for understanding, please reach out to us. We want to hear your voices as well. We're offering a platform for you to share your story. It's really important. I know it's important for people to share their stories. So please do reach out to us. And with that, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for joining us. Together, we can ensure that Anne Arundel County is free from hate. Together, we can ensure that Anne Arundel County is truly the best place for all. Have a good and safe evening, everyone. Feel free to reach out to us at nohatehere@aacounty.org. If you're on You will be hearing from us shortly in the next probably 2 to 3 days. We will be sending out the recording and the additional information that was shared during these webinars. And we're also going to be sending to you some surveys. Thank you again. Have a good day. God bless.